Chris, would you like to kick it off?
Yep. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Rosso. I'm a director with Gartner Executive Programs in the operations practice, and I will be hosting from the Gartner side today. We've got a total of 2 panelists from the Texas DIR, John Hoffman and Herschel Becker, and they'll be introducing themselves momentarily. On the Gartner side, we've got Paul Gunter, an account executive, and Carrie Zellner, the executive partner from Gartner. Andy Silva, who already introduced herself, will manage technical stuff on the DIR side. As far as logistics for this call go, we expect 80 plus participants, so lots of folks. And just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Panelists are gonna all be viewable by video. I will shut off my video once I'm done with my shtick. And we'll ask that all participants mute yourselves unless you're sharing. And I can mute and unmute people as well, or Andy can. As far as asking questions, please put your questions in the chat box and direct them at me, or you can direct it at all. Either way, I'll be culling the questions, concatenating them, and I'll be saving them. We'll send out a document with questions and answers and any remaining questions after the presentation. I think I've covered everything I need to cover. Carrie, am I missing anything?
The presentation will be uploaded and recorded today, and it will be available on the Texas DIR website probably within a couple of days.
Okay.
So back to introductions of the panelists.
Yes, I've done my part, so I'm going to shut off my video. Please chat me if you need anything, and like I said, I'll be gathering questions, so feel free to pop them into the chat at any time. The only thing I'll add is if you have a question for a particular presenter or panelist, just let me know who you want to address that question to, and I'll make sure they get it. Thanks so much.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is John Hoffman. I'm Chief Technology Officer at DIR and Interim State CIO. Thank you all so much for joining us. And I'd like to thank Gartner for participating in this and helping pull all of the ideas together. It's a serious challenge that we're all facing as we go into the next budget cycle. And there's a lot of questions about what is it that IT can do to help us resolve some of these different budget issues and do our part. And I hope that today gives us some good guidance around that as an enterprise. I've been with DIR for about 10 years and have basically focused in on the strategic side of where we're going as a state and as an agency, looking at the state strategic plan, legislative recommendations and reports through the biennial performance report, and enabling new technologies as much as we can and driving the adoption of those. So thank you all very much. Herschel?
Thank you, John. Herschel Becker, Chief Procurement Officer for DIR. I've been with DIR for about 4 years now, I think almost to the day, 4 years. Lead procurement and contracting for the agency. That's from the cooperative contract side across through the enterprise and shared technology services contracts as well. And I'm all about improving IT procurement and contracting, so hope to share some ideas today and encourage you all to share your ideas with us, maybe not during the session, but afterwards as well. Thank you. Carrie?
Everyone, I'm Carrie Zellner. I've been an IT executive for over 22 years, both in public and private sector. I am an executive partner with Gartner on the state and local government side. I work with clients, executives, CIOs, IT leadership, as well as the executive suite on all of their innovation plans, their digitalization transformation, organizational transformation, security, and advise them on cost optimization, as well as any other of the initiatives that may be relevant for them. Paul?
Hi, my name is Paul Gunter. I'm an account executive for the state local government team here at Gartner. My goal is really to support agencies with addressing and aligning Gartner advisory services to their mission critical priorities and helping to align, whether it be, people resources or research, just to help them execute on their missions more effectively. So just here to support the call.
Great. I'll be leading the discussion today on the IT cost optimization, and we'll be taking you through various slides. I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about the overview of the agenda. We've finished introductions as well as the webinar logistics. We will go into navigating through a budget crisis. We'll talk about cost management evolution, looking at both cost cutting as well as cost optimization and then value optimization. We'll also look at and highlight some of the areas of the CARES Funding Act that you may be able to leverage during this time. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers. At each one of these, at the end of each one of these subject, we will pause for a moment, open it up to questions. Chris will field those questions for us, and you can direct those, as he mentioned earlier, to any one of the panelists or all of us. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how to navigate through the budget crisis. We are all living in unprecedented times right now. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a lot of economic challenges for all of us, both in private and public sector. During this time, we looked at the overall incident, and at the time of the response, everyone was reacting and, very much in reaction mode and trying to find out, how do we enable our business to continue, while we're working remotely and we have the stay-at-home orders. Then we went into more of the recovery phase. As it started to extend, the stay-at-home orders kept extending and extending. It was really, how do we continue to leverage business? Or leverage technology to enable our business. What new functionality do we need to do this on a longer term basis than we initially had thought? And then we get into the restoration, which is, do we return to the office? Do we continue to work remotely? And, there's a lot of unknowns on what this looks like. But during this phase, there's a lot of opportunity. And to be able to innovate and look at new ways to really help the business, streamline their processes and, really be able to work remotely effectively. So with Governor Abbott's, recent, instructions to manage through the economic shock, the 5% budget reductions is quite a hit for all agencies. Both K-12 and all state and local governments are being affected and impacted by this. Being advised to cut 5% and maybe even more at sometimes will be creating a lot of challenge. So today what we wanted to do is just walk through some ways that you can navigate through those challenges, how you can leverage some of the Gartner resources to help you with being able to use frameworks to help you identify areas where you can cut and areas where you shouldn't be cutting. Texas DIR team will also talk about areas where they can assist you through this and navigate through these times. As Winston Churchill always said, and I must hear this phrase probably 3 to 4 times a week now, never let a good crisis go to waste. With that said, what CIOs should be considering during a crisis right now is really, how do you evangelize and, the value of innovation right now? I think the business is a lot more open to, maybe solutions and things that they were maybe resistant to in the past. Looking at better ways to meet customer needs, looking at perhaps, establishing a balanced task force that can assess market conditions and consumer behaviors, look at short-term survival responses, and then also make sure that you're looking at those impacts on longer-term initiatives. Looking at short-term and long-term opportunities, realigning innovation and portfolios and roadmaps, reprioritizing and looking at the business and strategies and where do you need to pivot. Ensuring that your organization is resilient, looking at traditional practices that really probably were antiquated anyway, and maybe looking at how you can streamline those and automate. Obviously accelerating business innovation and fostering that agility right now is really important, especially with all of these unknown times. We have no idea how much longer this will go. This could go through the end of the year, it could go through next spring. We're all just trying to kind of pivot as we need to and really build out the technology organizations to be able to align with that. Look at the current sense of urgency, and this goes back to the Winston Churchill, never waste a good crisis. It's like really leveraging that sense of urgency to help accelerate innovation, help open up the minds, of some of those business maybe naysayers that you had in the past. But really look at crowdsourcing. How do you campaign for IT and really get the business aligned and on board with what IT is doing. And so today, part of the cost management evolution will help us navigate through that. There are 3 phases of the cost management evolution, and we'll go over today cost cutting. We'll look at cost optimization as well as value optimization. We'll do a deeper dive in each one of these areas throughout the slide deck. Cost cutting, we'll start there. This is all reactionary, right? Everyone is being mandated to do this. You know, the board's telling everyone to cut costs. You know, everybody's trying to get creative, looking at short-term, immediate reductions. You know, what does that look like? What can we eliminate out of the gate? What can we rationalize? Where can we renegotiate and get more value potentially? And the way that we're advising our clients, and our analysts and our advisors have been working steadily on, you know, different ways that we can help our clients navigate through these budget cuts, and looking at a really formalized framework. It will help make sure that you're being thoughtful during this process instead of being really reactionary, because that's really our first initial response. But it's like looking at each opportunity that's generated. What's the upside? Is this worth the effort at all? You know, even reevaluating, you know, what your current strategy and portfolio looks like. You know, is there any potential, you know, financial benefit now that things look a little bit differently than that when we developed that strategy back in October? You know, looking at the financial benefits overall, and, you know, does this action, you know, really affect any enterprise cash flow? Is it small, medium, or large? Looking at your mission impact, does it have a negative impact? Does it have no impact at all, or is it really positive? This may change your view on whether you should be doing it or not. You know, looking at time requirements, is this low-hanging fruit? Can we get this in really quickly, you know, for the short term and have really good added value to the business? Is it long-term? Is it intermediate? Looking at the degree of organizational risk, is it high, moderate, low? You know, will the mission leaders ensure the changes are made? Will you get backing on this particular initiative? Looking at the degree of technical risk, is it high, medium, or low? You know, that may dictate whether you do it. If it's a really high risk, but there's really low return, or, you know, really low financial benefit, maybe it's not worth doing. And then looking at the investment required, you know, what is the timing on that return investment? You know, is it high, is it moderate, is it low, or none? You know, are you going to really be able to leverage investment, or perhaps you don't have any investment and it's just a process realignment, or just a modification of a process, but you need to get everybody on board with it. So really leveraging a framework at this time and making sure that you're very thoughtful about how you approach this is really important. Some of the areas that you can look at where you can save right now is, you know, looking at renegotiate your network rates. A lot of times people use brokers. They look at where they can consolidate their telco lines. You know, looking at, do we have a separate contract for the library versus the police department versus the public safety? You know, looking at those opportunities, and there's a lot of opportunity on the telco side to be able to renegotiate these, especially if you're leveraging brokers, or you know, renegotiating at this time and consolidating. You get volume discounts. You know, looking at labor rates, can we renegotiate this? We have some staff aug contractors. Does it make sense to go back to that company and renegotiate at this time to maybe get lower cost savings there? You know, looking at your desktop contracts and the software, is it being leveraged? Is it being used effectively? If not, maybe you should be getting rid of it. Maybe now is the time to consolidate. And maybe if you have Adobe licenses, maybe there's, you know, several different, you know, licenses that people have kind of gone, you know, bought rogue IT at one point. Maybe consolidating those and get volume discounts would be really an opportunity. Looking at shelfware, you know, are there legacy servers out there that you all had to keep up and running just because someone runs one report, you know, every quarter? You know, looking at that, maybe if they still have to have that legacy system, perhaps it's more, you know, it'll be more cost effective to maybe renegotiate those maintenance contracts. You know, looking at SLAs, you know, maybe there's opportunities that maybe you don't necessarily get cost savings, but you get value. Maybe there's additional functionality that the vendor at this time would be willing to, you know, throw in and help you out during these times. You know, looking at your unnecessary assets, selling those, deferring desktop purchases, which, you know, now really it would be, how do we leverage and get more laptops for everyone? So looking at a lot of opportunities across the board, you want to look at the financial benefit of that, the time involved, the organizational risk, and the technical risk and the investment required. Each one of these areas, as you start to see, you want to look at the weighted average with this framework of what really makes sense and what would be most beneficial to you. And so I'm going to turn this over to Herschel to talk a little bit about Texas DIR and some of the areas and maybe opportunities there might be for contracts.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. So Carrie covered a lot of the various areas. I just want to reinforce that. Take the opportunity now. You know, with the given the budget constraints, vendors might be more willing to work with you than risk losing the business entirely. And especially as we near the end of the fiscal year, organizations are in the process of renewing or extending existing arrangements. So now is a great time really to look at those repeat or ongoing purchases as well for things like staffing that Carrie talked about, software as a service, or even deliverables-based services to realize savings going forward. DIR has bulk purchase agreements in place for hardware, software, and other products or services. So be sure to check for these agreements before making a purchase or renewing an existing purchase. You might be able to take advantage of those agreements, or if not actually purchasing under that particular agreement, you might be able to take advantage of pricing that is provided to other customers through those agreements. Also, if you are interested in making a large IT commodity purchase, let us know, because DIR may be positioned to leverage your spend as well as additional customer spend to negotiate bulk purchase rates and eliminate, and this is important for the procurement folks and IT who has to wait on the procurement folks, eliminate the need for you to do a competitive procurement. So DIR has statutory authority to negotiate on behalf of multiple agencies and other eligible customers, and that reduces the time to procure those goods and services. And also remember, as you use the DIR cooperative contracts, that pricing and those rates are based on minimum discounts and not to exceed rates. You can always negotiate better pricing under those co-op agreements. Carrie?
Great, thank you, Herschel. You guys, we're going to pause now and open it up for questions for the panelists. Chris, do you have any questions coming in for us?
Nothing in the chat yet, but all please feel free to add a question and I'll be happy to pass it on.
Great, great. Well, then we'll keep moving along. I want to talk a little bit more about cost optimization. And really, this is where you're looking at structured improvements. You know, how can we be very, thoughtful about the improvements that we're making at this particular time? You know, does it improve efficiency? Streamlining a lot of these processes that maybe were manual at one time. Looking at increasing productivity, and obviously now with the remote workforce, that increased productivity is so critical because people aren't in the office. We need to be able to streamline and automate processes that people can be able to work together and collaboratively and effectively during these times and beyond. And then looking at where we shift spend. There might be a lot of opportunities out there where it's like, look, we have this particular, I'll give you a perfect example. In one of my former lives, when I went into the role, we had 7 CRMs. And so, looking at consolidating those CRMs and really looking at an opportunity to leverage one CRM where you're leveraging one skill set to support it. You have one training, type of LMS modules on the different functionality. It just was amazing how we streamlined, increased productivity and efficiency across the board by looking at shifting all of that spend into one consolidated application. Some of the things that you could look at opportunities within your organization is, really where are the optimization opportunities? Can you leverage shared services? Can you centralize and standardize that technology? Does the police force have a different application that they're using that potentially someone else, across the organization can also use that technology and then start to reduce contract spend? Looking at cloud services, how can we leverage? Maybe, we could, reduce our FTEs in support if we just looked at areas where we could possibly move things to the cloud or a SaaS provider. Looking at IT transparency, zero budgeting on cost items. standardizing these applications, one of the opportunities that I've always leveraged when I've gone into an organization is how many rogue IT projects are out there. How can we consolidate and actually streamline these and leverage maybe one piece of software that really can get 80% of what the requirements are for the business? Looking at improving your sourcing and procurement capabilities. Are there opportunities where this can be streamlined and automated? Look at agility and what's your current capability for agility and mode 2. Can you support the business effectively leveraging those models? Temporarily suspend training or travel. And so as you start to navigate through all these areas that might be areas to optimize, you want to look at that financial benefit. Again, the weighted average, is it high? Is the organizational risk high? Your technical risk moderate or low? The investment required and the time. And so there's a great opportunity to be able to do this on every really capital and OpEx spend that you have within your organization. Some of the cross-government shared services that you can also look at leveraging and looking at the capabilities within IT or call centers, emergency and non-emergency, administrative applications, networks, mission applications, looking at desktop acquisitions. Are you supporting, are you supporting different types of the devices? Does that make sense at this point in time? Looking at self-service websites, maybe that is going to be something that is really, as you start to navigate with remote workforce, people won't be on site to help you out. So, being able to do some type of self-service website so that people can help themselves a little bit more with knowledge bases. So a lot of opportunity in those areas to optimize cost. But also looking at joint mission, IT cost savings, looking at government optimization across the board. Is machine learning and AI a capability that first of all, is there a business appetite for it? Is there a need for it? And how would it work within your organization? Look at teleworking and working at home, opportunities to give back that facility space and maybe use it and leverage it for something else. Look at canceling projects that really don't add value. They might be something that the business thinks is really necessary, but in different times, maybe it was necessary. And as they have to pivot along with IT, it might not be as necessary. So really looking at opportunities all over the board, asset utilization analysis, do you have an asset management program? And if not, should you start to really look at implementing one so that you understand what your assets are and what the spend is on those, and what the maintenance and actually the cost to run those. Just from a support perspective and maintenance perspective. Looking at deploying e-procurement solutions, consolidating radio systems where it makes sense. Looking at geospatial systems and data, is that an opportunity for you to really start leveraging and looking at cost savings across the board? And then, everyone's moving to agile. It's maybe state and local government or K-12 is a little slower than, maybe your private organizations, but, really looking at agile approaches that really enable the business to get faster, better functionality might be a really good opportunity for you to be able to leverage some of those opportunities that come up. Looking at business opportunities, when you look at digitalization of business processes, this has become even more apparent that every agency needs this. I did have one client that I think for, I don't know how many years, probably like 4 years, the CIO has been really, really pushing to get, digital signage, right? Being able to have like a DocuSign in place so the judge would stop signing manual copies. Now's the time to push for this. Now's the time to start looking at opportunities. During the pandemic and when there was the stay-at-home orders, that judge had to start signing everything online. And so he really got used to it and was like, well, this isn't so bad. So now there's a real good opportunity to look at how you can leverage what you may thought you were doing in the interim, but really starting to get the business buy-in. Looking at business process outsourcing, again, does it make sense? If it's not our core competency, should we be outsourcing this? Looking at your data management, asset optimization, inventory optimization, and then going through, again, the framework. What's the financial benefit, customer impact, organizational risk, technical risk, investment required in time. And when you start to look at this and get the weighted average, you should be able to look at a lot of areas where you can really, really start to help the business optimize cost. John, I'm going to turn it over to you now. I know there's a lot of areas that Texas DIR can help in these areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Carrie. Certainly a long list of opportunities there, and DIR has its different programs and services that align to that very closely. One of the biggest and the best known probably is our shared service set of technologies. There, it ranges from managed security services, which security is so high on everyone's priority, and we must maintain that through even challenging budget times, to application development. We've got the data center program with compute storage. The Texas.gov program is a great alternative for agencies and entities looking to do any type of citizen interface and payment engine. The print mail side has great opportunities, and as we're looking at the volume and the increase in volume, the prices and the ability to leverage those services are really compelling. And finally, we've got different network solutions too, depending upon where you are, and either from agency standpoint or entities, and especially in and around Austin, that may be something to look at. The thing with the shared service in DIR, as we offer them, is there is an assurance to those programs. DIR takes a lot of time and effort in order to ensure that they meet all of the different obligations of the state through procurement and operating security, and of course then the speed to enable it, we hope is a benefit for everyone. Besides the shared service, a component of that I want to talk about is the cloud side. We've worked so hard not only to enable different cloud services, but to drive adoption. We've got different training programs, and have really worked to with the new model. I may talk about this a little further later, but it puts basically the entire cloud ecosystem from the big providers of Amazon, Azure, and Google at the fingertips of state entities. And that's great because, the cloud, although it does take effort many times to transition to the cloud, it gets into an environment that you're paying for what you use. And as we've all seen, sometimes the need to scale is immediate. And they have those resources and ability to drive that quickly. You mentioned agile methodology, and we are continuing to try and work with entities, especially in their project development and delivery. The project framework team, Tom Nyland, is great in assisting folks going through the methodology of agile. We've gotten different input from federal government partners and other states on how they best do that. Health and Human is leveraging that quite a bit, as well as other agencies. And so if you're looking at agile and you're trying to figure out how do I really drive that and get started, and is that an opportunity to do some cost savings, please let us know, and we're happy to support that. One other thing I'll mention, you talk about the remote workforce and video conferencing. DIR, besides offering the services, we have a wide array of different IT guidance, if you will, white paper kind of things that talk about, well, how's the best way to enable remote workforce with the technology, the different network considerations, security considerations. It also goes into video conferencing guides. And, a lot of that now, when you look at public meetings, how can those get set up? What are the stipulations? What are tools and techniques to make sure that they meet all of the obligations? So we are a great repository of support and services. We hope that it meets your all's needs. If you have questions on those, we certainly provide more detail. I know Herschel's also got some different business and cost optimization points through his procurement team.
Yeah, so we've got a number of options that are available through the Cooperative Contracts Program as it relates to remote teleworking. As an example, e-procurement or procurement to pay solutions, those are available. In terms of optimizing from a procurement perspective, we also have an innovative procurement lab that is available for customers' use, and it can be used to employ a more iterative, progressive approach to contract award. John talked about agile development. Well, we're applying a lot of the same techniques to procurement, where we're going through those processes in sprints, if you will, and it's a more iterative, progressive approach to contract award. The process provides for greater opportunities to select the right offer and to realize the contract savings through competitive dialogue with the potential awardees. So rather than what we all may think about in terms of developing, as I say, a very heavy solicitation document, an RFP, an RFQ, or RFO, and then throwing it across the fence to the vendors and having them respond, and then you evaluate and score. This is a process whereby you go through that iterative process, and you learn more about the offers, and the offerers learn more about you and what you're looking to build or to buy, and it just leads to a better process. It leads to a better award where you're selecting the vendor or vendors that are best positioned to do the work for you. And you learn about those capabilities really through that procurement process, not by necessarily reading their initial written response. So certainly we tout that process and we encourage our customers to participate in that. And early on when we started running some procurements through, initial feedback was you can't do that. And the question is, well, why can't you do that? Well, procurement doesn't allow for you to do that. Well, what I can tell you is that everything that we've done is within the state guidelines and requirements and statutes and rules, but there are ways to facilitate the procurement to get something that you're looking to buy in a more expedited and streamlined and progressive method so that you get to the right vendors.
Great. Well, thank you, Herschel and John. You guys, we're going to go ahead and pause here and open it up again for any of the participants if they have any questions for John or myself or Herschel or Paul.
We have a number of questions that came in through the questions pane that I can start talking through.
Okay, great.
In the last 8 or 10 minutes or so. Any suggestions on convincing a CFO that electronic signature can be more than signature? For example, signed with username, password, depending on the level of risk for financial transactions.
I'll take this one, everyone, if that's okay. I think that the best method is to kind of walk through that framework a little bit, right? Talk a little bit about how you can leverage, the digital signing program for other uses, as well as it's a security. It's also can become, you can align that with security and additional layers during this time and with remote working. There's a lot of opportunities. One of the things I would highly recommend is always just doing a business case so that you can outline every reason why you're doing it, what the return on investment is, and what really that business outcome is going to be. It's going to be operational efficiencies. It's going to be, a secure method of being able to get the documents signed in an efficient manner.
Great, and I would add on, there has been several different reports through the LBB that go into, I believe one of them is a gear report, efficiency report, a couple of years ago, and it talked about all of the different signatory requirements and statute and the enablement of the digital platforms to meet those guidelines. And if you'd like more specifics, certainly reach out to us and we can provide that kind of information and links to those reports.
That's great. That's great, John. And one of the things that I really encourage all the CIOs that I work with is that, when you're going through your project portfolio, it's really looking at what is security related. If you really look at your project portfolio, I would say that at least 25% could be aligned with the security program or an initiative. If it's modernizing your equipment, then that initially, it's legacy outdated equipment that may not be updated or patched, or you might want to look at any a network upgrade could also be related to security. So I have always encouraged everyone, because for some reason, obviously reasons, security initiatives get passed through pretty quickly. So I always encourage everyone to tack on the security piece to that.
Yeah, they are very efficient, though. I know the DIR implemented it several years ago, and it was amazing how quickly it enabled the process to flow. And that goes back to some of the creative ideas that Herschel was talking about on process. It's not a matter of shorting the obligations. It's a matter of being able to move it quickly and digitally. Ursula, are you going to as well?
Yeah, I would also say, I garner support from your legal team, right? General counsel would seem to be the bottleneck in terms, or the obstacle in terms of digital signatures. But I think what we've seen is that legal supports digital signatures, and they may be able to help you with your CFO in terms of convincing them that this is legal and it's safe, and it's something that's consistent with statute.
Absolutely. Good. Chris, do you have another question?
Yeah, we've got 5 or 6. This may be more of a comment from Vincent. We do thin in some cases, but not all. Vincent, just if you want to expand on that, just pop that in the question, and I'll ask it again. This question is for Herschel. Herschel, Rob asks, you mentioned leveraging a broker network. Are there brokers on a DIR contract? I assume we have a deal with AT&T.
Okay, so I'm trying to remember the reference to the broker security. Maybe that was something that was on one of the slides.
Yeah, no, this is back to something that I mentioned. In my previous life, you guys, I've actually, when I had to consolidate telco lines, I had like 400 sites globally. And when I had to consolidate those, I used a broker to do it so that they could do the, everything for me. So I leveraged brokers during that time. And, brokers will work with small agencies from a doctor's office to, large enterprises where you have, any type of telco needs that they can negotiate that.
Yeah, and Carrie, I know through our cooperative contracts, we do have, I think they'd be titled network assessments. And right. Certainly, if you're uncertain of your network's efficiency and redundancy in these days and age, the redundancy and diversity is more important than ever, right? But that can be done pretty quickly, and oftentimes is, at the end of the day, a real cost benefit.
Right. And so if there are, contracts out there that you have with disparate vendors, it would be great to talk to Texas DIR about, leveraging those, where they're getting the volume discounts and where you can consolidate those contracts.
Yeah, and if you want to send us an email after this, we can help find those vendors under contract.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next question.
Yep. John mentioned some resources, white papers, etc. How do we get access to those?
Those are on our DIR website. If you go through resources, there's a whole list, and I will tell you, we are redesigning our website. Thank you, Indy Silva and team, to make those a little more obvious. If it's a particular topic that you're interested in, again, you can send us a note, and I'll see what we've got, or else, Gartner has definitely got a vast resource of different documents and things, and they may be able to, through Paul, help you out.
Great.
All right.
You guys, I know we have several more questions. What I'd like to do is keep moving through the presentation and then table those a little bit for, each section, and then at the end, leave a little bit of time to go over some more of those. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about cost valuation. As you start to move through all of the different pillars of the evolution, value optimization is one of the critical ones where I think a lot of state and local government and K-12 should be looking at this now. As everyone starts to go through this pandemic and they're looking at opportunities to cut costs, what we're seeing at Gartner is that, really right now we should be increasing costs. And so it's being able to validate that spend, being able to look at the business value that you're driving through technology, invest in business outcomes and really focus on your business outcomes. And so, looking at aligning value, plan and prioritize one, innovation that is really, really meaningful to the business. Execute and measure so that you can show that this really did add value, and it continually adds value so that you can continue to get funding for that particular initiative. Constantly look at ways to iterate and innovate throughout the process. The stages to business innovation, really in the response, it's, what do we do now? And this was really kind of the survival mode of, when the pandemic occurred, what we're all doing, looking at make sure that, really it's all about public safety and safety of your employees. But then looking at now, everyone's kind of like refocus. What do we do next? We're being told to cut our budgets by 5%, but at the end of the day, they were probably lean already. And there's a lot of value in just, looking at, cost savings that on the non-important and non-essential things, and looking at how you reimagine. What do you do longer term that's going to add more value than perhaps something that you thought, a year ago was going to add value? And really thriving and partnering with the business is where you're going to get the most momentum on those types of initiatives. And so as you start to look at IT investments, they're expected to accelerate. All of our advisors and all of the analysts, what they're looking at and seeing is that, really state and local government and the public sector was so far behind in technology and innovation, and they were just starting to get to that cusp, where they were looking at smart cities and digitalization and citizens' journeys, and looking at how they could really optimize and look at enabling the business and citizens with technology. And so now it's even more important to strengthen the community resilience. And so each one of these common areas are looking at a short-term impact of investment is really expected to go up for both communications, education, public sector, and healthcare. And when you look at the longer-term impact, the tech investment is not going down. It's looking at how do we really start to look at leveraging technology, AI and IoT and chatbots, and how can we leverage things to make sure that we are strengthening the community and helping with a more positive citizen experience and safe citizen experience. Herschel, I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about this just in each one of these sectors.
Yeah, so I won't cover all of them, but just as a an example here, what we've seen, especially through the cooperative contracts program, is that as IT organizations work to set up and continue to support remote working, we saw an increase in the use of the DR cooperative contracts over the past several months. In fact, and I've got the numbers through May, not through June just yet, but through May, we're running almost 20% over the same period last year. So we're seeing that increased investment, if you will, in technology to continue to support the business needs of the public sector. State agencies in particular are up 70% over last year, and local government spend is up about 25%. We are not seeing any declines due to COVID. In fact, our customers continue to rely on technology, and even more so in responding to the disaster.
Great, thank you, Herschel. And so when you look at the value through digital transformation, these are great opportunities. And, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, it's really evangelizing innovation right now and seizing that moment, looking at the crisis as a complete opportunity for you to drive those digital initiatives that you've been really, really trying to get funding or backing on from the business. And so, government digital transformation opportunities, it's looking at anything as a service, again, that reduces your on-prem footprint. It allows you to look at things where you streamline processes, you get updated, environments, you strengthen your infrastructure, looking at anything that you could put, out there as a service so that you are not trying to manage everything in-house when it's not your core competency. Looking at multi-channel citizen engagement, what does that look like? What will it look like? And really being able to look at maybe shorter term, what we could do right now to navigate through the pandemic, but what does that engagement look like longer term? Because our world is going to be a new norm. And so being able to get ahead of that would be a really good idea. And again, you're going to have your business sponsors behind you, right? And so that's back to where you evangelize this, really talk about how you get champions for you and for the IT department. Looking at digital citizen journeys, what does our new norm look like? I'm not going to go to the DMV, or, quite frankly, maybe the DMV, you could leverage queuing software that you currently had at the DMV, but now maybe at the library, you could use the queuing software. And so looking at opportunities to even take what current technology that you have and expanding it across the organization to have multi-use. Looking at obviously your security, your SIM management, that's always high priority. Looking at biometric identity management platforms, open data, analytic services. I just did a presentation yesterday on data analytics will probably be taking the biggest jump in technology spend because this new the new pandemic has really increased the the need to be able to drive business decisions through analytics. Everyone wants to make sure they're making the right decision and being thoughtful about how they're using the money they do have to spend on technology. And then Texas by Texas, automating digital assistance, looking at areas where you really can leverage, any type of digital assets to be able to drive efficiency, not just from the business perspective, but from a citizen's perspective. RPA, robotic process automation. I mean, that just is going to help streamline everything internally. And then AI and machine learning is really, really big on the trend list from Gartner this year as well. A lot of agencies are just on that cusp of starting to move into that through, the hype cycle and looking at areas where they can make smart cities. John, I'll turn this over to you now to talk a little bit about what Texas DIR is doing in that space.
Yeah, thank you. On that last slide, it really interests me when you look at all of those different categories of industry that show immediate and long-term impact, and it's communications, education, public sector, healthcare. Those are all our sweet spot in government, right? That's where we focus, and so we have so much opportunity. But at the same time, you have to remember that all of these different innovations, they have to meet a cost-benefit scrutiny that we're all going to be put under to ensure that what we do brings immediate value to the state. One of the things that's on this list, and it's right off the top, is move IT to anything as a service. I mentioned earlier about cloud and how that has opportunities in scalability and cost function, but you got to keep in mind that there's a question about on a security standpoint and on the applications, can that work in a private cloud? Or is there a hybrid cloud environment that needs to be set up? I know that our new model that we've got actually then has a cloud management function. So it takes a lot of the different question about which cloud and which is the best value. And it's not necessarily always just value about what is the monthly cost today, but it could be long-term. How much does it take to move my data out? What are the different terms and conditions with it? So always be very mindful as you're moving forward, and we do have those different types of services and support available. The citizen expectation is huge. We mentioned Texas by Texas is a digital assistant that we're just beginning to roll out. But we think so much about the citizen expectation, and in the past there was always the concern about we had to ensure that there were citizens who wanted nothing digital, that they were always enabled and that they could continue to get government services, and that will continue to be true. But I think now more than ever, there is a component of the citizen group that says we're 100% digital. Due to health concerns, I no longer want to go out and have to do anything in public sector without it being just remote at my fingertip, at my desk at home. And those are challenging for us, and we're going to have to continue to look and see how do we enable those solutions at the same time that we're driving these costs. The cloud and these different environments, one thing about it is it certainly enables what we would call limited support environment. Think about a sandbox. With those can be initiated and set at really dollars. Low dollars, a few dollars a day by the hour kind of thing, just to be able to say, does it work? And you can try it, understand it, and then realize that you can move from a discovery session into a pilot phase, and that pilot then moves to an initial deployment, and the deployment then begins to scale. And it doesn't have to be just a swing. And we have different teams that can help go through that methodology and understand that. And Carrie did mention the analytics piece. The different cloud providers. Well, we're always looking for analytic solutions to look at from a state perspective. Those different providers have them online available and can take your data sets and run with enormous efficiency and understanding of the data. They can mine that and do great things. So there's a lot of opportunities out there today, and if people are having challenges, we can certainly help with that.
Great. Thank you, John. That was really helpful. and a good description of some of the benefits that Texas DIR can provide, and as everyone's going through the digital transformation, looking at how it can enable cost optimization. And, on the previous slide, there was some information, about print services, and John and Herschel mentioned this earlier as well. They're going through that analysis and working on that now. And it's amazing. I have several clients looking at printing right now. And now that people couldn't print while they were working remotely, everyone's starting to look at, different types of workflows and how do we automate this and do the document signing, all digitally. But really looking at your manual processes, there might still be some that are not worth even looking at as you go through that framework. It might not be worth the value or the time, but you want to look at where you can automate, where you can digitalize, and look at, all of these different areas where you can leverage artificial intelligence, smart machines, Internet of Things. A lot of state and local government are right here, right in the middle, but starting to get on that cusp. And so, really being able to evangelize the innovation for your organization is important. Let's talk just about a quick use case. And you guys, I know we're getting at time here, so I want to get through the CARES Act too for some opportunities that you may have to get funding for some of your initiatives. Looking at a use case, looking at ways that El Paso, the city of El Paso was able to save money through putting a virtual face on government procurement. And so they got an avatar, they named her Laura. She helped navigate, through special programs, where to find bids, FAQ. This reduced their call volume significantly. So the overall software cost was like $20,000. But when you looked at the overall annual cost savings, which was going to be reoccurring, it was right around $26,000 a year. So now they're looking at how do we, if we can continue to leverage that, cost savings across the board, how can we take that money and actually reapply it towards something else in digitalization? They're looking at actually deploying this now, the Department of Planning and Inspection and El Paso International Airport websites. So when you look at these type of things, building out those business cases and really showing that return on investment and, cost avoidance, or, what is the business outcome you're expecting and what is the overall impact? Is it security driven? Is it compliance driven? Is it, legislature driven? So, being able to have those discussions and have it documented, I think would be really, really helpful. And here's some ways that, state and local government will start using, and education will start using data and analytics. You can look at it from a detection perspective, tax evasion, human trafficking, looking at automating programs, license renewal fees, and, fee collections, looking at anticipate, policy impact, transport needs, but really looking at data analytics as how can it help drive efficiencies and reduce face time with citizens. And that's all would go back to citizen safety, efficiencies, citizen experience. And so being able to leverage some of these, options may be something that you start putting on the roadmap and start socializing with the business. Even though you're in cost cutting mode, this may help drive this, the innovation roadmap with the business. And then you look at your priority matrix. This is a Gartner generated document. We survey tons and tons of CIOs every year in government. And this was from 2019. But really they were looking at less than 2 years out, we would be looking at transformational. What does transformational mean? Looking at high benefit, high value to the business. And everyone, what the analysts had come up with is that all state and local government that were surveyed were starting to move, within the next 2 years to cloud office, full life cycle API management, which is, a huge undertaking for the IT department, outdoor location intelligence, as well as cloud services for government. John, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I'll just say that, the digitization is a journey, and sometimes it seems like it's overwhelming to get started and how to get started, but the reality is the maturity is pretty quickly enabled. Whether it be just saving stamps, and in one report I saw is the state spends something like $80 million a year on stamps. I mean, that's a big opportunity. We can do things to help that, and relatively easily. When you look at process management, we talked about DocuSign and things, where how can we enable that? There's different RPAs. One of my quick stories is this last week, an agency implemented an RPA that took a 55-hour process down to less than 2. And that's not about then looking at headcount and reducing headcount. And sometimes people get kind of concerned around the whole robotic thing. It's about enabling then that other 53 hours of work to go do other things that are much more valuable, and drive into new areas and improve other customer support. So, and then past RPA, you get truly into artificial intelligence and some of those things. But that does not come overnight, but as a journey, each of those in themselves can certainly be done. The chat bot is another one, and your example with El Paso is spot on, right? Just think about that from a customer satisfaction. Not all customers like it. It's not a mandate thing, but if they can use it and they can get that answer quickly and they know specifically what they're looking for and they can kind of search around, if you will, with different questions and those answers, how great is that? And at the same time, it does the budget right. So I'll stop there for time wise.
Yeah, thank you, John. And, back to that, when all of the unemployment hit and, all of the different systems were having so many problems around, the US, being able to have a chat bot maybe would have been really effective versus all of these people, not being able to get through and being on hold for several hours. You guys, just on a time check, we have about 6 minutes left, and I do want to get to the CARES Act funding. And then what I think we could do just as a house cleaning item is that we can take all of your questions that have been submitted and we can answer them as a panel together after this and then put them up on the website along with the presentation. So obviously, we talked a lot about public health safety, preparedness, virtual access to education, health. There's a lot of opportunities around digitalization, around education, utilities, housing, security, agriculture. A lot of these initiatives could be funded with CARES funding. And I just wanted to go over really quickly some, areas with, remote working and schooling that a lot of CIOs and state and local government are getting a lot of traction. Looking at collaboration tools, video conferencing. I'm not going to go through every one of these, but we will post this on the website. There's a lot of opportunity to use the CARES funding for this. The CARES funding has to be used by December 31st. If it's a solution, it has to be implemented by December 31st. If it's a license that you buy for like VDI or something that's automated, it will be covered for that first year. If it's signed this year, you can sign for a year, but you really should reach out to Texas DIR can help you with this. You can reach out to the governor's office, their website. Also, Texas Emergency Department should have some information on this. At the end of this slide deck, I have also put a ton of resources where you could leverage some grants that may be out there and CARES funding that may be out there. Again, this has to be net new services that were not budgeted. They could not be on a budget before the pandemic hit. So any net new, like if you're looking at queuing software, if you're looking at, opportunities to get drones for surveillance so that you can help, your field workers with safety. IT services, we were actually able even to get some CIOs Gartner licenses for their EXP license to be able to get, this rolling with them as well. So there's a lot of opportunities. I would highly recommend that everyone investigate this within your organization and see what you can use. If you have spent the money already, you can also save those receipts and submit those as well, if that was something that was unplanned. So all of those additional laptops and things like that that you've procured may be able to be viable for this type of funding. So really take some time to do some research on this. If you haven't, reach out to those departments and we will definitely put some of the resources that are available to you on this slide deck so you can access them. So during this time, we're really just recommending that people look at the CARES funding. How can we leverage this to start even the innovation? Just please note that if you do buy innovative type of things like that queuing software, after year one, that will hit your budget. But it's setting expectations with the business as well, that this is now bringing extraordinary value. It's creating public safety. It's increasing our process and, throughout the organization allows us to be remote. And so you'll want to make sure that you have those types of business cases and those discussions so that they know that there will be additional budget items, later in the year. But as you're parallel doing that, if you can optimize costs and reduce costs, that might be a wash across your budget. I don't know if we have too much more information, you guys, and I am so sorry that this went over, but I did want to share our contact information with everyone. We are available. We will field all of those questions. I want you to know that they will be out and posted up on DIR's website, along with this presentation and along with the recording of this presentation, if you want to share it internally with anyone on your staff. Any quick questions? We could field a couple.
I don't know that we've got time for questions, but I will say Herschel and I certainly appreciate Gartner, Carrie and Paul and the entire team for helping pull all of this information together. I think there's a lot of leads. And none of it in itself will certainly be the end all answer for anybody, but I think that it created a sense of awareness, of opportunity, and then together we can all figure out how we get through these challenging times. So thank you so much for being part of this and helping us.
Great. Thank you. And everyone on the phone, thank you for participating today. I hope that it was really, really helpful. Please feel free to reach out to me, to Paul or myself, and we'll be happy to help you with anything that you need regarding this. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day.